All right, everybody, welcome back. Sorry, we had a little bit of a technical problem here at the beginning of the show, but we are back. And let me tell you, I'll go ahead and just kind of repeat it. Thank you so much for everybody joining us for yet another live episode of the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show here in the Smokin' Studios. I filled a bucket list, and I don't know if anybody saw this, but this is a bucket list guest for me. This is a guest that I have been following in both very many ways since he's been around since Daily Wire. I think that was around 2006, 2005 when I first started hearing the name Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, and so on and so forth. And so this is great to have him on. I'm a little bit starstruck, but let's hopefully I don't get too foot in the mouth or whatnot. We keep the conversation going. So without any further ado, because there's just nobody here to actually see me, let's go ahead and bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Knowles. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Very kind introduction. I'd like it if you could introduce me on every episode of my show. Get a little respect for me and to my producers. And it's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is a like I still can't believe, you have it on. And I read you a little bit of the email I sent back a while ago. And of course, again, never expected you to even see it. Never even expected you to even, I don't even think Mayflower was a conceptual idea for you
Yeah.
in 2021 yet, was it? Or have you been
Well,
working on it for that long?
I have actually, but
Because
it
it
was
wasn't
not in
released.
motion. Yeah, so it was in my head, but it wasn't really elsewhere at Daily Wire. The thing about Mayflower is I started smoking cigars when I was 15. And which is frankly a little old for Italian Americans in New York. But I really loved them, and
Supported by his
I
mother, by the way. It's not like
that's
it's not like he stood on a corner and had a guy go buy a pack of
right.
Swisher
Yeah.
Sweets, all right?
No, it was from my mother was cool with it. She said if a teenage boy's going to have a vice, that's a pretty good one. And now I don't even think it is a vice. But I started enjoying cigars at that age, and they really meant a lot to me. I wrote my college admissions essay about how much I loved
Yep,
cigars. Somehow it worked.
yep.
Started a cigar club in college. I wrote a cigar review. I really loved it. And then I had this idea in my head. I said, man, it'd be really cool someday to have my own cigar line. And I don't know if you agree with this, but in my experience with cigar smokers, guys who are really, really in cigars, it's one of two things. They either want to start their own cigar, or maybe even more frequently, they want to start their own cigar lounge. And the
Yes.
thing about this, I realize, I mean, I've been to about 100 billion cigar lounges around the country and around the world. And the thing about a cigar lounge is it sounds great and you like going as a guest, but it's actually a ton of work. Like it's
Oh,
so hard. It's not. So
awful.
anyway, I said, "All right, I'm not doing that." And so I had this idea in my head for a cigar company, and I wanted it to be. I was probably 19 years old when I first thought about this, and I wanted it to be patriotic, but I didn't want it to be too red meat. I didn't want it to
Sure,
be just
sure.
like guns and flags and hot dog
Bourbon.
cigars or whatever. Like, yeah. So I said, well, part of my family, the not Italian part of my family, came on the Mayflower. I said, I like that because there's this family aspect which is very important in the cigar industry. And it's a lot about heritage and family.
Hmm.
And there's this patriotic aspect, and it's kind of elevated, right? We think of like the old blue
Sure,
bloods,
sure, sure.
but it's also very down to earth. The guys who came on the Mayflower were sort of weirdos, and they were not elites, they were not royalty or aristocrats. So I said, there's this kind of fun paradox there, where cigars are this very luxurious thing on the one hand, but also you can get a great cigar for $12 on the other. So
Hmm.
it's this amazing accessible luxury. It's a great equalizer, as we all know. Whenever you go to a cigar lounge, people of all sorts of different backgrounds, all sharing this common bond. And so anyway, I had that in my head for a long time. Pitched it to Daily Wire. They basically told me to buzz off with. No, I mean they were cool about it, but they said, "Look, we're not going to start a cigar company anytime soon." And so whatever, we kept doing our shows, and then eventually DW was doing so well, and we were printing money. We just
Oh
it
yeah.
was really going gangbusters. And I said, well, this might be a good time to get you guys behind this. And so they were open to it, and I kind of pitched them my idea, and I said, hey guys, you know what? Instead of you going out and having meetings and committees and this and that, and you're going to get bad tobacco from bad suppliers because you don't know who you to talk to. I said, what if instead you just let me do the whole thing? Is that cool? and they basically agreed to it. Now, fortunately, they gave me an excellent business executive who could run the actual logistics of the company. But when it came to the brand, when it came to, we had great artists we worked with, one in particular, when it came to the blends, especially when it came to just the kind of vision for the product itself, I'm very privileged that they left it to me. And so I got to really live out my dream that I'd had since I was about 19 years old and get to do it every day.
And for those of you that don't understand, Michael is a legit cigar nerd. So like when we're going through and we're gonna do the "What are you smoking tonight" segment. Now Michael unfortunately is in his home. He's not gonna be smoking with us tonight, and that's totally fine. But he's gonna at least tell you guys what I'm smoking.
Yeah.
So before we do that, Michael, how much for those that know who you are as a person, have watched you for over 10 years at this point, um, there's nothing you do that's not methodically thought out, at least in my opinion. Where the heck do you find time to do all the studying that you do, all the reading I know is needed for your job, and then to squeeze in the cigar stuff? Like, how much of your non-air time is cigars?
Well, it depends if you mean cigar business or cigar
Both. Well,
leisure,
company, both of
because
them.
they kind of work together. And you
Exactly.
make a great point. I joke a lot that if you look at my schedule, like when I wake up and when I'm at the office and when I come home or traveling, I, my schedule says I work a lot. I work like all the time. However, I say I can't really say I work a lot because I don't have a real job. I don't. What is my job? I get to read the books I want to read. I get to state the views I want to state. I get to interview the people I want to interview. I mean, my job is such a delight that smoking cigars is now part of my job. Very few people get to say that, and so you're right. So a big part of my job is I get to read. And that's great because I love reading. Well, a great friend to have with you when you're reading is a cigar.
Oh
So
yeah.
even if I'm at the office, say I'm doing some work, but I want to try out other people's stuff. I want to see what's hitting the market for
Hmm.
cigars. Maybe I'm getting some samples from our blenders, and I want to dial it in. Especially if I can't get to a factory, I want to say, okay, well, great. Maybe I'll sit at the table. I could have 5 or 7 cigars out. And it's not that I'm completely neglecting my daily wire work. In case anyone at the company is watching, I'm not 100% neglect. I'm only 80% neglecting it. But I've got the cigars laid out, and I'll say, great. If I'm testing out blends and we're getting real precise on, okay, here is the slightly aged Connecticut wrapper. Here's the 7-year aged Connecticut wrapper. Here's the Ecuador Connecticut. Here's the Connecticut. Stuff that's a little bit subtle. I can't just go smoke that cigar and then 3 hours later smoke the next one. I really kind of have to have them all going at once.
Hmm.
And but while you're doing that, you take your puffs. Okay, you read a little, or you write a little, or even down to you send the tweet or whatever it is. So the way I try to do it, maybe it's because I'm so disorganized, is I like to kind of make it all part of the same thing. Even down to the fact that my you know chief Mayflower humidor and my Mayflower executives are in the same building as my show producer, as my editors, as my marketing guys. It's kind of all jumbled up together,
Sure.
which is really convenient, really fun.
Yeah, and now cigars are a tax write-off for you,
That's right.
business-wise. So like that's the best of both worlds. And
The funniest thing, I'm really frugal. I was frugal when my show wasn't making any money. I'm frugal when my show got bigger. I'm frugal before Mayflower. I'm frugal after Mayflower was a big hit. Uh, and truly, I don't know. I love a good deal. Maybe it's because I'm from New York. And it occurred to me a few years ago that my biggest kind of indulgent expense was cigars. Obviously, I'd go out, with the guys, or I'd go to different shops, try different stuff. And sometimes I'm smoking that $8 stick. Sometimes I'm smoking that $50 stick, and it pains me to, it's really, but I want to try all this stuff. Okay. My chief expense, my like main thing that I spend money on for myself, I just figured out a way to get it for free for the rest of my life. I said, all right, we're good. That's it. I guess the kids are going to college now. Maybe.
Well, because if you go to a cigar lounge, it's now called research.
That's right. It's legitimately a write-off.
Yeah,
That's great.
You know, they got this new blend, and I gotta try it to see how it stacks against mine, and you know, it's just industry research. You know, that's
it's a good excuse for the wife too. I got to do my I got to work. You know.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, babe. That fourth cigar today is required. Ben's up my butt for these numbers. We've got to get it right.
Yeah.
So let's see. We got a. Hey, Michael, big fan. Thanks for all you do for the conservative movement. The cigars are fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the cigars. But before we get into that, everybody, we've got a giveaway tonight. All right. We're doing 3 of the brand new first in their line Maduro release, the Dream. And we are also doing, now, Michael, validate this, please, for the audience. We're also doing the Pocahontas, and it is, in fact, signed by Michael.
That's the real deal. When we started the cigar show at Daily Wire, which was called Backstage, we wanted a cigar store Indian, and we said, we got to get Elizabeth Warren. She's the perfect cigar store Indian for our show. And we reached, there aren't a lot of cigar store Indian companies, so we reached out to however many there, and they said they'd make us an Indian. We told them the Liz Warren thing. They said, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to get into politics. I said, come on, guys, it's really funny, you know? And so anyway, we couldn't get them to do it. We ended up having to go to some kind of like Hollywood set shop. It wasn't a real cigar store Indian shop, but they were able to make this thing for us. So we get this giant Liz Warren. She drops out of the presidential race like 3 seconds later. It was amazing timing. And so anyway, we thought, all right, the best tchotchke would have to be the miniature Pow Wow Chow Liawatha Liz Warren Cigar Store Indian.
And I love the fact that she's holding a box of Mayflower cigars. Like that just tops it off. So everybody watching right now, go ahead in the comment section, type in the words Mayflower Cigars. Really simple. Doesn't need a whole lot of instructions. The words Mayflower Cigars, and we're going to do the giveaway here later on in the show. So if you're watching, type in Mayflower Cigars, and we'll do the giveaway here in a little bit. So, Michael, we're going to jump into the only segment that we do on the show, which is the What Are You Smoking Tonight segment, sponsored by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Tell everybody what it is I'm smoking tonight and why this is special for the brand.
Well, I will. I wish, I guess I could sort of say, this isn't what I'm smoking, but this is a nice guy made a cigar pen for me out of the Mayflower Dusk, which is my favorite of the blends. I know you're not supposed to say what your favorite blend is, but that's what I would be smoking. I feel kind of embarrassed, frankly, that, a man should smoke in his house. And if my office were anywhere in the house, in the basement or something, I could pretty easily do it. But the way my house was built, my office is directly off my master bedroom and bathroom. And, I told my wife, she and I started dating when we were 16, but I started smoking cigars when I was 15. There are very few things I've loved longer than my wife. Cigars, I guess, are one of them. But anyway, I have to smoke vicariously through you tonight. You are smoking the Mayflower Dream. And the Mayflower Dream is the third in our little trilogy of the first run of cigars. And we made them in different formats, appropriate for the blend. But the Dream was the third one. And the irony of that is, it was actually the first one that I thought of. There was at least the first wrapper that I thought of. So the Mayflower Dream the Mayflower Dawn, the first cigar of the day, is the Connecticut wrapper. It's got a Cameroon binder, a Nicaraguan blend filler. Then the Mayflower Dusk, which is my favorite of the three, though the Dream gives it a run for its money. But the Dusk is the later in the day cigar, and that's a Habano wrapper from Ecuador, Sumatra binder, and Nicaraguan blend filler. And then I said, guys, this is supposed to be an American patriotic launch. We get the Connecticut wrapper on the Dawn, but I said, I want some broadleaf. I want either Connecticut or Pennsylvania, but we already got the Connecticut covered with the Dawn. Maybe a Pennsylvania broadleaf wrapper. And at the time that we launched Mayflower, it was notoriously hard to get your hands on broadleaf. And it was especially hard for me to get my hands on broadleaf because I was new to the cigar industry.
Correct.
So I waited, bided my time, we were finally very lucky, able to get our hands on a bunch of broadleaf. And so it's a Maduro, but it's actually double Maduro. It's a Pennsylvania broadleaf wrapper, and then a Mexican San Andres Maduro binder, and then a blend of Nicaraguan filler. So you kind of round out the day. And you start out with what I think still has a lot of body, a lot of flavor in the Mayflower Dawn. It's got a little more body probably than your average Connecticut. And then you get into this real, I would call it kind of a weird blend with the Mayflower Dusk. The Sumatra binder does a little, adds a little note of citrus or something. I don't know, but I just love it. I was
It's a
talking
chocolate
to,
stick. In my opinion, on my palate, it's a chocolate bomb. I mean, it's a really smooth, rich. It's got a little bit of a grittiness to the smoke, which I like, and it
yeah, yeah.
does. It's got a little bit of spice on the lips, which is always nice, but it's a really great smooth chocolate stick. Like that's the
Oh, you're
predominant
talking
thing
about
I get.
the Dusk or the Dream?
The dream.
The Dream, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I would say the Dusk is the one that's got a
Hmm.
little of the citrus on it. That's kind of like it tastes
Oh
like a
yes,
steak.
I
But
know
I
them
think,
well. They're staples in my humidor.
but I think you're totally right about the Dream. I get a lot of that chocolate, and the thing I really like about it, I like a Maduro at the end of the night, and I like that there's a subtlety to it. It doesn't come out and just punch you in the face.
No,
It's not a pepper bomb.
no.
It's got a kind of sweetness and subtlety that I think of it as a kind of dessert at the end. I often will smoke it as a dessert.
No, I totally agree with you. So thank you so much, Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, for sponsoring the "What Are You Smoking Tonight" part of the show. No, I absolutely agree with you, Michael. I think it's fantastic way to end the night. You find some people will start their day rough and strong and end it
Yeah,
with a Connecticut.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I smoke enough where it doesn't matter to me, but I certainly do like ending the night with something strong, and this is what I would put as medium, maybe slightly medium plus in
yeah,
body, but it's
yeah.
not gonna curl your toes, it's not gonna blow your sinuses out, the retrohale's really smooth. It's definitely a full flavor cigar. You did a great job, but we actually have a question here.
Yeah.
Are you a blender of any kind? Is that kind of like, are you blending as a hobby type deal?
I might be breaking news with this,
Oh,
but
oh, hold on. Go
so
ahead.
the way we had been, I mean, I was working with like a very serious blender. I wasn't out, growing up in the fields or anything, but I knew that I wanted to come to the final blends for the sticks. So the way we had been doing it early was uh, our guys would be sending me just a ton of sticks, slight variations here, there. Okay, what do you want to push more on? I would give them some thoughts off the top of my head. Maybe I want this kind of wrapper, maybe this, whatever. They'd send it to me. Then I give them my notes. They'd send me some more. It was kind of took a little bit of time. So I said, I want to go to the factory in Esteli, and I planned to go down there. Got my plane ticket and everything. Set up the logistics, which is kind of hard when you got to do a daily show. Anyway, I show up to the airport, and I had a little bit of a problem with the government. I was not permitted into the country at that time. Now I don't know if it's because I had tweeted something. I don't know. I'm definitely on the other side of the political spectrum from the government of that country.
Just a little
I,
bit. Just a little
a
bit.
little bit. I'm a journalist, Catholic, so I had a few marks against me in that regard. Anyway, we had to go back to the old version of, okay, send this blend. Okay, I like this. Can I get more of this? I got to know exactly how long this has been aging just to kind of calibrate what it's going to end up at in whatever, 3 months or 4 months. So what I would say is I'm literally not a blender. Like I'm not there going through, picking the leaves out, though I'd love to do it. And if I can get into the country, I'd like to try my hand at it. But, I was very lucky in that, being guided by much more expert people than I am, and having the leeway from Daily Wire to do whatever I wanted with Mayflower, I was able to settle on the blends that I was really after. And I was such a jerk about it. I mean, I took like 8 months on some of this stuff, but I felt it was worth it. And what my argument to the guys was, look, I and we're doing this as a passion project. I've wanted to do this for many years, and I have told the audience that I know about cigars. So I said, you can't let me release a bad cigar. I wouldn't do it anyway. I'm not doing this principally for the money. We make our money in political media. I said, but the other reason you can't let me release a bad cigar is if I tell people it's a good cigar and they smoke it and it's a bad cigar, now they're not going to trust my judgment on anything. They're not going to trust my judgment on politics or anything else. So I said, we got to do it right. And the whole team agreed with me. And so I was really pleased. And, I was very grateful also to the audience because when we launched it, I was told we had 4 months supply. This is right before Christmas. Or sorry, right before Black Friday. I was told we had 4 months supply. It was around 50,000 sticks, maybe a little bit more, probably clocked in finally about 57,000. This thing sells out in like 24 hours. So I'm thinking, this is great. Wow, how amazing. But now I don't have any product for Black Friday. I don't have any product for Christmas. These are premium cigars. It takes a while to roll them and
Oh
age them and
yeah.
ship
Oh
them. And
yeah, absolutely.
they're made overseas, obviously. And so I said, well, it's a good problem to have. But that was the audience just taking a risk and buying the cigars. Obviously, no one at that point had tried it. And when we got the first reviews and people liked it, I already felt confident about the cigars. But when we got the first reviews, this was before the dream. It was just the dawn and the dusk. I said, okay, cool. We got a real thing. And now then we move into the next phase, which was getting into retail.
And your first retail partner was Smokin'.
It was our
So
first big one.
yes.
Technically we had a smaller shop or two, really great guys up in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. But yes, our first really big contract was Smoke Inn, which is awesome. And absolutely love the guys over there.
And now you're becoming like a staple at TGS. You got a couple years now. This is your third year,
Yeah, that's right.
second year.
This will be my second year.
Yep.
I just had such a great time last year, and at my producers and the guys who do my show, they really don't want me to travel for this extraneous stuff because it makes it very hard on the team and for the show. But I said, guys, if you're going to go to one cigar event all year, the Great Smoke is it. I mean, it's just
Oh
great.
yeah. Oh, it
The
is.
Great
And the
Smoke and
20th.
PCA, you got to hit.
Yeah, and this is the 20th anniversary, so this is the year definitely not to miss.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so I know you've said this. I'm pretty sure you've said this, but who rolls your cigars? I know you haven't said it on the show tonight, but I've heard you say it in other shows.
Yeah, so these three blends are all rolled by Oliva. And there's an amazing tie-in here. I mean, if I were more candid, I could almost tear up thinking about it. But I've loved Oliva cigars for a long time, since I was a
Since
kid.
you
It was
were
one of the first
15.
cigars. It was 15. Really, it was 15, 16. And I was when I started having cigars. My mother took me. A family friend gave me one. I really liked it. So my mother takes me in the Jersey Shore to a little cigar shop in Cape May. It's this last town at the tip of New Jersey, and a little boutique store, and they had all these little boutique cigars. And at this point, Oliva was a boutique cigar company. Tatuaje had just hit the scene. That was really boutique. It was kind of funny. Some stuff that you don't see anymore, Cusano 18. I remember this from my first shopping for cigars. I really liked that Cusano 18. Then, it was sold off and you don't really see it as much anymore. Well, anyway, all these smokes. But I loved the Oliva, specifically the O Perfecto. I just adored it. And for Christmas, my mother said, uh, "Hey, I want to get you a box of cigars." I said, "Well, that's so great." She goes, "Pick out what you want from either Cigars International or Thompson or one of the catalogs." And and we did not have a lot of money. Money was actually a problem, So I I was thinking, I was like, "What's look? I love those Olivas, and happy day, they're a very good value." So I picked a box of the Oliva O Robusto, and now I picked the Robusto because it was the least expensive format. So that part my mother was right about. But I picked Oliva because I love the cigars. And she said, "Don't get just the cheapest format. Whatever you want, get it. It's for Christmas." And I said, "No, no, no. I want the Robustos." Now I love Robustos. I actually much prefer the smaller ring gauge anyway. And but she buys it for me. And then as things happened, my mother died unexpectedly, like a year later, and I still had half the box. So I said, "Well, even though I'm a teenager and I don't have a lot of money, I don't want to just smoke through these cigars because they're very meaningful. So I want to save them, as this kind of memory of my mother. And I have a nice humidor, so I got that as a hand me down. I said, "Great, I'll keep them for a while." I said, I'll smoke one when I graduate high school. I'll smoke one when I get married. I'll smoke one. Maybe my kid will smoke one when he turns 15. I don't know, whatever it is. And so this is one of my real prized possessions. This half box of Oliva, little less than half now because I've smoked a couple. And anyway, I'm at a political show. I'm backstage. It was Mike Huckabee's old show in Nashville.
Okay. Okay.
And a guy, I won't say who, but a politician comes up to me. He says, "Hey, Knowles, you're a cigar guy, right?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." And he said, "Oh, yeah, me too." He goes, "I have to give you one of my cigars. I basically buy them from Oliva." I said, I'd been trying to start. It was right at the time I was starting Mayflower, and I couldn't get in touch with Oliva, and people were getting me samples that were not good. And I said, "Do you know Oliva?" And he said, "Oh yeah. You want me to introduce you?" I said, "Yes, I very much would like you to do." I don't even know this guy. And he says, "Okay." And he introduces me. I have a phone call. Within 15 minutes, we have a deal that covered not only production, but because of the way Oliva had sold, because of the corporation that it's now a part of, we also had a deal for distribution. And the crucial part was it was the kind of deal we could move on immediately, without going too much into the details of it. It was actionable right away, even for guys who were not in the cigar industry. And so I just think all the things that had to go right to lead to really anything happening for Mayflower, it was a lot. The fact that all of those things go right, and then my cigar that I've been dreaming of for, at that time, 14, 15 years, that cigar would be produced at the very same factory that made the box that my mother gave me is so next level. I mean, it's so difficult to comprehend that you just think, all right, that's Providence. That's how it's supposed to be.
And that's full circle for you too. Like if you want to kind of put it like that. What was the hardest part of we have a question. Well, so we have a couple questions here. For one, you had mentioned a little bit about smaller ring gauges a couple minutes ago. I assume you imply also Lanceros as being a cigar you like?
Look, it's the LQ, the Lancero question that comes up whenever you're hanging out with cigar nerds. They say it's either the Lancero issue or the Corona issue. I love Coronas. I love a Corona Gorda. I really like Lanceros. Some people are completely insane, like Lancero is always their top format. For me, it's up there. It's definitely up there. I do prefer the smaller ring gauge. Yes, no, it's like the cigar nerds freak. They love it. And I like it. I like it too. However, can I just, I was speaking to, well, maybe I think I can tell this tale out of school. I was talking to Nick Perdomo, and a guy comes up to us and he says, "Hey guys, for either of your companies, I want Lanceros." And Nick kind of laughs and he says, "Yeah, I sell cigars that people smoke." I sell cigars that people buy. And the thing is, you talk to any guy in the cigar industry, they always want to make the Lancero, they always want to make the Corona, and then no one buys them. Everyone wants a 6x60 or something. So we haven't produced them, not to any scale at least. I ordered some Corona Gordas just for my own personal consumption. We ended up selling a few of them. But look, I would love the opportunity to produce a Lancero, especially the Dream. I think could be excellent in the Lancero format. Uh, I would love the opportunity. Please, my message to the smokers, to the enthusiasts is: you got to buy more Lanceros. You got to give me the opportunity to pitch it as a business deal.
Well, what you do is you make a one-off, right? You don't have it in
Yeah,
production, and you tie it to like the what's the staff the Pope carries, right?
yeah, like that, a Crozier or
Yeah, just
something.
call
Yeah.
it the Crozier, really, something like that. That's like 200 boxes, 300 boxes, or
That's
whatever,
great.
just to kind of see what that would be. I think that ties into the whole thing.
That's pretty good. That's all right. That's not a bad pitch. So guys, because that's the thing. You could do it truly. If it's a limited thing, you could sell them easily. But look, for me, when I was a young man, I think back in the Stone Age, but it wasn't that
Feels like
long
that
ago.
now.
Yes, it truly, it wasn't that long ago that a nice, I don't know, 48 ring gauge cigar that was kind of like normal. And then it
Hmm.
crept up and it's 50. Now you got these Toros or 52. Okay, that's kind of big. 54. I remember when the Behike 56 kind of seemed like a baseball bat. Now 6x60 is totally normal. And now you're getting some of these guys, what, 70 ring gauge cigar,
Well,
80 ring
the
gauge cigar.
Aganorsa's got a 10x100.
Yeah. I know, that's in case someone breaks into my house, I can just crack him on the head.
Terrence Riley says he knows this a guy that smokes one to two of those a day. Of the 10x100, he said it on my show. He like that's like a 5-hour cigar.
No, first of all, yeah, nobody has the time for that, and second, nobody has the lung capacity to be even pulling the jaw. Yeah, even just it's impossible.
I've always said if I smoke anything over 60, I feel I should be paid.
Yeah.
So, next question here: what was the hardest part of starting Mayflower, and did you think it would actually succeed from the get-go?
The hardest part was, well, I say hardest, even though it came to me like manna from heaven, but the hardest part was securing the production deal. And then the distribution deal, obviously, in our case, followed right after, but that would have been very hard. That would have been actually probably harder had we gotten a production deal in any case. Now, it came to me like manna from heaven, I say. So, it really fell into my lap. But we had been endeavoring to find this for a little while before, and we were hitting a lot of roadblocks. And this government of ours, especially at that time, was very disinclined toward tobacco. Still is. So you had all those roadblocks anyway, and so that part, I should say, would have been hard. It would have continued to be hard had we not had this just amazing opportunity open up. Now, in terms of the success, I did think it would succeed. I was confident in the product. I'd spent long enough thinking about it and then even blending it. I was very confident in the product, and I thought it would succeed. I was surprised by how much it succeeded. I was, and I was surprised at how quickly it succeeded. That both of those really blew me away. The risk for us, we knew that the Daily Wire, had by that time reached a real critical mass. It was very, very popular. We could sell a lot of stuff, but I said, there's something a little different here about this product, because for a while, the then CEO of Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, he would spin up a new company overnight. When Harry's Razors tried to cancel me, actually, Harry's Razors comes out. Yeah, I was on some show. It was actually on PragerU. It was on a different network. Harry's decided to pull its ads and insult my audience because I said, yeah, I mean this was years ago. They were upset because I said I didn't believe in transgenderism, or I was even agreeing with that point. And so they pulled it, and Jeremy said, you can pull your ads if you want. That's no big deal. But you insult our audience, you tell us that they had bad values or whatever, now we're at war. And Jeremy decided to launch a rival razor company called Jeremy's Razors. He bought IHateHarrys.com.
Mm-hmm.
He put up a giant billboard outside their headquarters, IHateHarrys.com, launched an actual razor company that became one of the biggest boutique razor companies in the country. I mean, they were selling millions and millions of dollars worth of razors a year. So he does that. Then Hershey's embraces the transgender stuff. They start getting into and so Jeremy says, okay, I'm going to start Jeremy's chocolate, and I'm going to have two flavors. There's going to be she, her, not Hershey, she, her, and then there's going to be he, him, and he, him is going to have nuts. And that one too, he sold this is not an exaggeration. He sold, I think, 50 tons of chocolate.
Within one day, they were gone.
Within one day, it was gone.
The first original, because I jumped on to try to get it, and it was like 2 hours after it was released, it was gone.
All gone. Yeah. I mean, so then they had to try to source more chocolate. I remember, I was in the office that day. They were running around like crazy. Jeremy, I'd been doing an interview. I was working late. Jeremy said, sorry, you got to stay really late because we're going to film a commercial for the chocolate company that I just started today. I said, classic Daily Wire. Okay. So we do that. They got more material. He ended up selling, it was like 50 tons in 2 weeks. But all of that to say, to bring us back to Mayflower, I said, guys, these companies have been really, really successful and made a ton of money and gotten a lot of publicity, but they were all jokes. They were all kind of gotcha, stick it in the eye of the opponent companies. Whereas I said, this product is the first time we're making a consumer product that is just good, that it just is supposed to stand on the product itself. I said, I don't know if you can count on the same level of success. And then the irony is, in the long run, actually, it was Mayflower Cigars that really is the most successful over time. The razors are still very successful. Yeah, even the chocolates, I think wound it down a little bit because it's hard to ship in the summer. But like even that, they were big companies. But I was really pleased because in the long run, the product is gonna rise and fall on the quality of the smoke itself, and then the story. What kind of community are you part of? What kind of vision for the country do you see when you smoke it? And so, anyway, I'm really pleased that has been so successful, and I'm very very pleased that the customers were surprised me in that regard.
Well, I think when I first heard you were coming out with cigars, I've always known you were cigar. You don't mix your words with it. You are a
Yeah,
cigar. You've always said it. When I first came out, my biggest fear was, oh no, he did what Tyson did, and he just grabbed
yeah,
a company, right? And then we actually got to try the Dawn and Dusk when I got them through. I think the first time I tried them was the month you were on KMA with Abe and
yeah, yeah,
team. They
yeah.
put, I think it was the Dusk in the Cigar of the Month Club.
It
I
might,
bought it.
I think the first one they put in the cigar of the
Was
month
it the
was
Dawn?
Dream, or sorry, was Dawn,
Was Dawn
but
okay?
they put Dusk in later, and I forget at which point I was on the show, but they ended up putting both in.
Well, one of the months you were on, your cigar was in the pack
Yeah,
when you were on, and I went out and bought a box of each. Like I was like, oh my gosh, these are
yeah,
great. Like these aren't novelties. Like he's taking this
yeah,
incredibly serious, and I think that's always kind of the, oh, do I try a celebrity famed shaped cigar, and it's always nice when the cigar community actually gets a celebrity that truly knows the cigar world and the understanding of what makes a good cigar versus just, hey, let me just put my name on it type deal.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that review, and that's definitely what I was after. But the thing I tell people is, I'm not famous enough to put out a bad cigar. Listen, if I'm not making any casting any aspersions on Tyson cigars or anything
No,
like that.
no, no,
But
no,
if I
no.
were at the level of a Mike Tyson or the level of a Metallica, I could sell a cigarette, it wouldn't matter. But I'm not famous enough, so it's got to be a good cigar. And the other thing about it was, I had two thoughts going in on the caliber of the cigar, which was, on the one hand, if it's not going to be a good cigar, then what's the point?
Oh,
I'm
sure,
really
sure.
I'm I think this company will be successful. Obviously, it's a for-profit company, and I'd like to make some money on it. But that's really not chiefly what it was about. There are easier ways to make a buck than in the cigar business,
Oh,
uh, and
very hard.
like about a billion easier ways to make a buck.
Yeah.
And then so that was the one thing in my mind. And then the other one was, even if I could, work with a good blender or a good company and even get something that's good, it's not bad, it's just good. But if it's not special, if it's not adding something, if it's something you can get out there from any other number of companies, I said, well, then why would I do that either? I have a lot of cigars in my humidor and in plastic bags all around my humidor, for that matter. I have a lot of
Yep.
cigars. I don't need another one of those cigars. I want it to be something special. And then especially when you dial in on the patriotic aspect to it, it's like, well, yeah, I definitely need some Connecticut tobacco, and I definitely need some broadleaf, and I want it to cover bases. I want the three blends that we are launching. I want them to have a kind of cohesion to them. So it's not like I don't know, what would be a good example to use? Like, well, Padron is so distinct. I mean, when you're
Oh,
smoking a Padron,
yes,
and they're
absolutely.
as distinct as they get. And
I almost think
I
you
wouldn't.
could Pepsi challenge a Padron.
Yes, truly, truly. I mean, the Padron, just when you're in the mood for it, that's what you want, and you know exactly what you're going to get. And so I didn't want my blends to be as if you took like one Padron and one, I don't know, Ferriotego and one, Perdomo, or cigars that don't have a lot to do with each other. I wanted it to have a kind of cohesion to it. And anyway, so that's part of why I was such a nerd about it. And then the other reason, it gets back to another thing I had to prove a few years ago, which is the first time I gained real national notoriety, it's because I published a book. I didn't write a book, I published a book. And the book was called Reasons to Vote for Democrats, a
Greatest book
comprehensive
ever
guide.
written.
And definitely, in terms of dollars earned per word written, there's never been a better one.
You've got the
And
world record
yeah, it's maybe me and the guy who did Everything Men Know About Women. That guy sold like 1 million copies. But in any case, I did this blank book, and I just self-published it. It was to irritate my Democrat friends, and then it hit number one. Fox invited me on. I had
Yep.
never been on Fox News Channel before. I talked about it. Trump sees it. Trump endorses it on Twitter. I'm getting international press calling me about this like joke book, which was a very serious thesis, of course, and continues to sell a lot of copies. But anyway, all of that to say, I get publishers call me and they say, we want you to write another book. I said, another book? You're using the word another pretty liberally here because I haven't written a single book yet. And they say, well, we want you to write another. They give me a book deal. And I said, okay, now I got to write a book. And I had this thought when I was writing the book with words called Speechless. I said, man, I really need this to be as good as I can possibly make it because it's so easy to write the review. Knowles should stick to what he knows. Nothing. It's so because I started out in this other kind of thing, even in publishing, like I felt I really had to prove that I had the chops to write a real book that usually has words in it. And I felt a similar way with cigars, which is I did not come up. I mean, look, I came up around the cigar industry in that I was in cigar shops all the time as a kid. I was hanging out with the rollers and the guys down at the meat market in Arthur Avenue, which is now Casa Grande Cigars. I saw them as an advertiser.
Yep.
Look, I've been as a consumer, I've been around the industry a lot, but because I'm coming from a totally different line of work, I felt like I need to show people I'm really offering something here that is really coming from me, that you're not, you're not going to get at just a generic cigar shop. And that I was really pleased that that kind of nerdiness paid off. I don't know, but you talk to guys in the cigar industry, including the ones who really did grow up on the farms, or the ones who really did grow up in their father's shop, and they were rolling. And it's that obsessiveness that I think defines basically all these guys, whether you're talking on the producer side or even on the consumers. This is something that is kind of endlessly fascinating to those of us in cigars. And you love it for a variety of reasons. When it's social, when you're sitting alone, when you're, kind of on the connoisseurship of getting every last flavor note, when you're golfing or whatever, you're kind of distracted. I mean, it just checks a lot of boxes in people's lives.
It's the real man's fidget tool.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a great way to put it.
it's really what it is. So, being that you brought up Fox, if you'd be so kind as to say hi to my mom and dad who are watching the show, because they really love you and they actually saw you on Fox this morning. And in fact, my
Oh,
mom sent me it's 6 a.m. here, right? My mom's watching Fox this morning, sends me the clip, and then she goes, "Oh shoot, I'm sorry, I forgot it's so early where you are because my parents are in a different state." So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that you caught me because that was an early hit. That
hmm
was on Fox and Friends,
yep,
and so that was probably my time. That was 5:40 a.m. East Coast, 6:40, and actually the first time I did Fox and Friends or Fox and Friends first, I was living in LA, so the time was even worse, and
it's like
I think
3
it
a.m.
was. Yeah, at best. I mean, sometimes you go on into before 3 a.m. And so I realized my first national cable hit, I looked like a vampire. I mean, I just looked terrible, no makeup. And actually, there's an interesting tie-in. Obviously, the conservative movement is still mourning the loss of Charlie Kirk.
Mm,
He died a little under 6 months ago, and I vividly remember the first time I ever met Charlie in person.
mhm.
We kind of knew each other from the internet or whatever, but the first time I ever met him in person, this is many years ago now. It's in the Fox Green Room in LA at got to be 4 o'clock in the morning. I lived in LA. Charlie lived on an airplane, just bouncing everywhere, raising money, winning campaigns. So I'm sitting in the chair in the green room, half asleep, trying to just get some shut eye before the hit. Charlie comes in like a dynamo, just like this ball of energy bouncing off the walls. Hey, Knowles, ba ba do da dee da do. He's pointing over here. And it's like, bro, it is 4 o'clock in the morning. How are you? You're not even adjusted to the time zone. And anyway, he was always like that. But it was a real reminder even when I wake up for those early morning Fox sets. It's like I should be energized right now. I think about Charlie could do it 24/7.
Well, I was going to ask you this if you brought up Charlie. First off, again, massive fan of Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
um, and massive loss. Was he a cigar guy too? Because he
He
wasn't
was
a
not,
drinker
I'm
though.
sorry to say. No, he was not a drinker. He was a teetotaler. Charlie is
I knew
one
he
of
didn't
my
drink.
own. Yeah, he didn't drink, and he's one of my only friends with whom I've never had a cigar. There are a handful of them. Ben Shapiro does not smoke cigars. Jordan Peterson hates cigars. Doesn't want to be in the room with secondhand smoke. He's very meticulous about food and health and everything. Um, Maybe a handful of other friends over the years, but no, that was Charlie's one of them. However, I have smoked many cigars at Charlie's events. So I would do either meet up with some of the other guys afterward, or I would even I did it this past year after Charlie had been killed, but I did it the year before that too at Charlie's America Fest. We'll do a Mayflower cigar after party. Smoking is not required, but it is certainly invited.
No, that's great. Do you think if we somehow figured out how to kosherize a cigar, Ben would try it? I
Yeah,
don't know if
well,
that's possible.
no, I know.
Is
You get the guillotine cutter. It's the circumcision. I think that's how you do it.
just nip the tip, right? Just get a moil.
Yeah,
Get a moil to
that's
cut
right.
the cigar for him, and he'll do
That's right.
it. All right, so we've got a question here from a very close friend of mine, Knowles. What's your opinion on a great starter cigar for somebody who hasn't smoked frequently? Dusk or dawn?
It's the dawn. I don't. You don't want to judge a book by its cover. We don't want to be prejudiced, but generally speaking, the Connecticut shade wrappers generally are going to be a little more inviting and accessible for people who haven't totally singed their palate after 3 cigars a day for 10 years. So that's what we found. I mean, even going in, I prefer, and look, I go through seasons. Even during the day, I say sometimes I'm just really in the mood for a Connecticut, and I'll go on a week or two where I'm smoking Connecticut's the whole time. Um, but sometimes it's throughout the day. But of the two, between the dawn and the dusk, I prefer the dusk. It was that blend and that blending process that really lit me up even more than with the dawn. We took a lot of time with the dawn too. But I knew going in, I said the dawn is going to be the better seller. The dusk is the better cigar. The dawn is going to be the better seller. And initially we were sold out on everything, so you couldn't tell. But I said, I know I'm right about this. I was like, as you make the cigar, it's like, know that we're going to sell more dawns. And sure enough, when we finally got supply up to meet demand, it was the dawn that was more accessible. And it was I was talking to another like real hardcore cigar guy. I forget who exactly I was talking to now, but he goes, I judge a cigar company on its Connecticut. Not necessarily because I love the Connecticut's the most, but just, and I knew exactly where he was going. I said, because you can't hide it. You can't hide
Yes,
things in a Connecticut, right? It's
correct.
it's all kind of out there for you to see. So
Hmm.
that's a long answer to, if you're not in the swing of things, I'd probably start out with the dawn and then. But look, the day is long. There's dawn, dusk, and dream time. So you can get all three in.
Morning, noon, and night, right? It's like
That's
your
right.
your daily dose of Tylenol version Knowles style. Every four
That's
hours
right.
you have a different cigar, or every 6 hours.
That's
Um,
right.
Next one here, we got Mr. Knowles. Just saw on the website, closest lounge to me is in Massachusetts. That has your cigar in Mass. Has your cigars is in New Hampshire. Any chance that
Oh.
you will be going to Rhode Island?
I'd love to. I was at my cousin's wedding in Connecticut not all that long ago. And I mean, I'm sure you're the same. When I land in a city, my instinct is not necessarily to look up the hotel or the restaurants. It's you got to find that cigar lounge. And so anyway, I look it up in Connecticut, and there wasn't anyone nearby. In fact, the closest one was in Rhode Island. I forget the name of the lounge. It was kind of a charming lounge, but anyway, if I remember the name, maybe we'll try to get in there. You know, some of the states are really really annoying, and
Oh,
I mean it's
terrible,
brutal.
terrible.
Like we and look,
Colorado's
I
one of
grew up
them.
yeah, Colorado, yes. I mean, but a lot of states. I mean, California is
New
notoriously awful.
York.
But I grew up in New York. New York also is very very tough, at least the city. But I grew up in New York. I lived in L.A. Now I live in the sweet air of Nashville. But I had this thought, which is, look, I am personal friends with a lot of cigar store owners and lounge guys and I don't even know that I want to get into their shops because the hurdles you have to jump through to get into the shops in Connecticut, it's almost not worth it. We have accidentally landed in some shops in Connecticut, because the shops actually were so proactive about it that they kind of got it done. I didn't want to deal with all the regulatory loopholes. And Massachusetts famously is just absolutely awful for the cigar retailers. So look, would I like to be there? Yeah, when we started, we were selling so many cigars on the internet, on the show, on my platform, that a lot of our friends in the industry said, "Don't go into retail. Why? Your margins are so much higher. You're selling everything you can make. Don't go into retail." And I said, "I insist on going into retail because the internet shops are great, but a lot of the cigar culture is in the real
Oh,
shops, the brick and
sure.
mortar. It's right. I
The
mean, this
camaraderie.
is an totally. I mean, it's like this isn't a digital product. This is a
No.
physical product, and I'm going to light it. It's temporal, right? So I said, I want to be in the shops, even if it reduces my margins. I don't care. I'm going to make it up on volume, and even if I weren't, I like the culture, and then I really got an education on the regulations, and it's just nuts, man. I mean, it's like it's the most crazy anti-industry discrimination you can imagine, to the point that I say, look, do I want to be in shops in Massachusetts? Yes, but I only have so many headaches I can get every day. It might take a while to do it.
Now I'm curious because you talk about you'd like to go into the Rhode Island shop that you visited when you were there. Do you actually call shops and go, "Hey," or do you just show up out of the blue and try to like randomly sell a shop just for the fun of it?
Yeah, I will sometimes just sort of show up, and it's
That's
funny
got to be
because
wild.
it's great. No, I mean I love it, and like the thing about cigars is, uh, most guys are on the team. Not all. I mean, there are some cigar liberals, but I always say the cigar liberals are much more reasonable than the regular liberals. It's a kind of a different thing. But mostly the guys are on the team.
They're
Often they're
also
pretty
they're
politically
also
engaged.
much more much more what pre-Obama liberal.
Totally, totally. Yeah, they're definitely an old type, and
Blue dog.
so we have a great, very small but hardcore team at Mayflower, and I'm also lucky because when we started the company, it was not in the cards for us to hire a big sales force or anything like that. So we kind of flipped it. We flipped it in a lot of ways. A lot of guys start in retail and then they move to online. We started online and moved into
Mhm.
retail. A lot of guys start out, they sell their cigars to the shops. It was kind of fun. And then the shops hopefully sell them to customers. For us, I told the audience, I said, guys, I want to be in the retail shops and you're complaining if you go to your shop and it's not there. So I'll tell you what, I need you to be the deputized sales team. If you just go and tell the shop owner at your favorite lounge or bar, you tell him that you want Mayflowers there, just have him email me or here's a website. And so it ended up kind of going in reverse. We would get these shops asking us if we could stock them. And for a while we couldn't because we didn't have the supply. Now we can. And then sometimes I'll be traveling, I'll just sort of go into the shop and say, hey, hold on. Seems like we're missing something here. And have a great conversation with the owner, and it's great. I even there's a local shop where I'm friends with the owner, and but I realized we had never set him up to sell Mayflower. So it was one of these I just kind of had forgotten. You think close to home. It's like sometimes you neglect your family more than you do the guy hundreds of miles away. And so I said, wait, we gotta. and anyway, we connected them. I think we're all good now. But it's a lot of fun. I tell people, uh, say, listen, guys, I'm a cigar salesman. Like if I'm introducing myself at a conference or something, I say I'm a cigar salesman. I moonlight a little bit in politics, but if really, you talk about my real job, I'm a cigar salesman.
That's great. That's great. You've done so many interviews at either cigar events and spoken with members of the Congressional Cigar Caucus. And
Yeah, yeah.
what do you think is a political compromise or back channel moment that you think could only be brokered over a long, slow cigar?
Mm. In terms of it, well, I know that a cigar could facilitate it. I mean, without naming names, because I've been in some of those smoky private rooms. Uh, Democrat members of Congress are a lot easier to talk to over a cigar. It's kind of because the cigar is woke repellent. Like the real woke, kind of crazy commie types, they're physically, they can't even enter the room with the cigars. They're not, their constitution's not made for it. So the
Squad.
Democrats you're going to get, yeah, right, right. But the Dems you're going to get are going to be a little bit more normal. They'll still be pretty liberal, but you can talk to them. Uh, what would the issue be? Someone proposed a plan to me the other day to deal with student debt. And I don't think this plan actually would work, but it's the closest thing I've heard to it working, which is uh, allow people to pay off student debt with pre-tax income. Because it's one of these weird compromises where you're paying off student debt, which the libs really want to do and the conservatives hate, but it's
I
a
like
tax
that.
cut, which the conservatives like and the liberals hate. Now, the reason I don't think it's going to work is because, even today, where college seems kind of worthless, even today, if you have a degree from a 4-year college, you're more likely to have a higher paying job. And again, like you really got to get into the details there because a lot of people are going $200,000 into debt to not get any kind of job and basically have a worthless education. But still, you would be in a situation where the taxpayers would be subsidizing a group of people that is likely to make more money than the median American. So that's one reason I don't think it's going to work. The other reason is the reason they have all this debt is because college has gotten a lot more expensive. The reason college has gotten a lot more expensive is because the government is subsidizing college.
Oh yeah, you gave us
They're
50
they're
grand,
guaranteeing
we're
the
gonna
student
make
loans,
it
right?
55,000. We're gonna get that 5,000 out
Yes,
of you too.
that's right. That's right. So it's like that's the other problem is if you were to subsidize the kids paying off their or the adults paying off their loans, you would end up just the cost would keep going up. Like you wouldn't have actually solved the problem. So anyway, that's a big non-answer because it's a deal that could be brokered in a smoke-filled room, a little give, a little take. But it's even no matter how good the cigar is, I don't care if it's a delicious Mayflower Dream. I don't think that deal's getting brokered.
Now, since you and I don't disagree with you at all. One of the I don't know how true this is. I've never been able to actually figure out the truth behind it. Just stories about Churchill. He would put a box of cigars down, obviously the famous Churchill size cigars, and would put a toothpick in the end of his
Yep.
cigar. So, because for him it was the longest ash was means I'm more dominant. I don't know how truthful that is. That's just one of the lores
I've heard versions
around
of this
that.
story since I was a kid, or you'd unfurl a paper clip or something,
Hmm.
stick it through the
Yeah,
whole stick or something. And I too have no idea if the story is true, but I choose to believe that it
I
is.
do too, because
It's a
it's
good
pretty
enough story that
badass.
I choose it.
It's pretty
Yeah.
badass. Um, and if with all this crazy regulation that's going around, well, first off, I want to share with you what I think student debts should be taken care of.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard you and Ben talk about versions of this, or you, Andrew, Ben talk Daily Wire. I've heard talk about versions of
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that the schools should actually be the ones giving the loans out.
Right. Right.
And they should be the ones backing it, because if you want to have paint by numbers and a master degree in paint by numbers, you're
Yeah.
obviously not going to be able to pay back anything. And the schools should be able to put their own trust and belief in you as a person, the same way a bank does with a house loan. And
Right.
that's my belief, and I've always agreed with that stance that you guys have taken on several
Well, and
shows.
it's funny because that really helps things on two fronts. which is, one of the knocks on universities today is that they're not setting kids up to get jobs, and they're not setting kids up to make money, and they're not employable, which is true, and that's annoying because I think most people go to college to get a good job. Now, what's funny is getting a good job is emphatically not the reason that universities have existed.
Mm-mm.
Universities are supposed to be these places that are really not about getting a job. It's just about reading a bunch of old dead guys and thinking about, civilization and culture and contemplating your life. Ironically, a university education was supposed to be not for your work time, but for your leisure time, so that really for your cigar time in many ways.
Yeah.
And but the worst part of modern universities is they're not giving you that. They're not giving you like the liberal arts education that you're supposed to get. That's way out the window. They've convinced you that you're going to go there to go get a job, and they're not going to train you to get a job either. So you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're getting the worst of all worlds. And I think, okay, well, look, if the university is going to get you a really good job, then great, you can pay off your loans. And if the university is just going to train you in dusty old books, which I'm a big fan of too, then it should cost a lot less than 200 grand, or what, right? I mean, universities did not used to cost this kind of money.
No, it did. I mean, take your college you went to. It's significantly more expensive than when you probably went to it.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with, first off, I don't even think school. You went to a very Ivy League school, very prestigious school, but if you got an endowment that big, you shouldn't be able to again, you should be backing those loans as the school.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing too about Yale is when I was there, I think the tuition cost, I think all in, it was probably a little under 60 grand a year. But I was lucky. I paid basically nothing to go because, they didn't even do merit scholarships. It's not that I, did so much better on a test than my classmates. It's that I didn't have any money. So because I didn't have any money, I got to go to school almost for free. And the really, really rich kids whose dads had tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, it didn't, it's all the same to them. It didn't really matter. It was as if they went to school for free.
Mm.
The people who got squeezed were the people in the middle. The people who had too much money, so they weren't going to get the financial aid, but not enough money that they could actually pay for the school. And it's, that happens so often in America.
Texas.
Where right. Yeah. I mean, look at Texas. Like, the lower quintiles, they're taken care of. The upper quintiles, they're totally fine. But it's that middle that gets totally squeezed. And you're basically punishing people for having done just well enough to be able to get slammed by these crazy bills.
Oh yeah. No, the last 40 years has shrunk the middle class much more than I would say probably since like the 90s. I would say the middle class has been shrinking. Gosh, has it been?
Yeah, the financial crisis did a lot. COVID did a lot. Yeah.
I can't believe I'm 40 years old. So I'm like, 20 years. Oh my gosh, no, the 90s. Yeah, it makes me feel old. I mentioned movie quotes to my friends that are like 10 years younger than me. Like, they look at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so old.
Yeah. That was a silent film, actually. Yeah, it's weird to quote a silent film. But,
right. So I'm curious to you, with you being now a cigar brand owner, like a legitimate brand owner that sells out frequently, if a future administration, because we all understand that, tobacco in many ways was the original cash crop of this country that now we turn our back on for various reasons, some good, some valid, some not. If a future administration tried to regulate cigars or tobacco out of existence, what, in your opinion, it would be a Michael Knowles form of a civil disobedience? Do you think the cigar community could kind of come together and realistically be willing to engage in? And what form would you wish that they'd have the courage to try?
So the easiest form of civil disobedience is the one that we already kind of have to deal with, which is you would obviously make the product elsewhere. Now, most premium cigars are made elsewhere. There's some that are made in the U.S., but a lot of them are made elsewhere. And the funny thing about your hypothetical, which is this future Democrat administration making things hard for us, actually, I'm a card-carrying Trump supporter. I am a great defender of the president. Voted for him 3 times. The White House is not making things easy on us right now. Okay, and I've actually tried to communicate this on my podcast or in conversations with friends. and all to no avail, obviously. And I get it. I understand the White House is placing a lot of pressure on companies all around the world, but especially in Latin America. But 18% tariffs are one thing. 100% tariffs on Nicaragua. I mean, that really is a burden on the industry that's already so heavily regulated from the domestic front, with SCHIP and all of the many taxes that attend to that at the federal level. Plus, then you got the state level and local level taxes. So it's, in a way, I feel okay about it, because tobacco is already so heavily regulated. I say, what more can you do to us? Good grief. But let's say they did try to really get rid of cigars. The real form of civil disobedience, I think, is guys would just keep smoking them. You'd still be able to get them because they're made overseas anyway. And a great form of civil disobedience would be guys' cigar nights. And what's funny about that is that's already a form of civil disobedience. The fact that guys still get together, smoke cigars, talk about great ideas, or talk about politics, or talk about what religion or sports. I mean, really anything. That is a kind of form of civil disobedience in a culture that tells us to live online, that guys should not have their own spaces, that we all need to just do things that are completely 100% healthy. In a way, we're already doing it. So I think probably that civil disobedience ought to be there.
So let me ask you this then. In your Christian faith, your Catholic faith, it does say in the Bible, if those laws are not against God's laws, more or less follow them. I'm very simplified paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
Um, not smoking tobacco is not against God's law. Would Michael Knowles go down to the street corner and buy corner store cigars, bootleg cigar? Like I mean, what like it goes to that level. Like how do you, as somebody that goes, okay, well, biblically that doesn't go against it, how do you then structure that to yourself from a religious standpoint of fighting against something that really isn't unbiblical for them to do?
That's a very good question. That is a profoundly nuanced question.
Thank you.
And I think I have an answer for you from a profoundly nuanced thinker, which is St. Thomas Aquinas. And the answer is this. Aquinas asks himself whether or not political revolution is justified. And for us as Americans, this is a very important question, because our country is born in a revolution, albeit a revolution that went right when another revolution at that time, the French Revolution, went totally wrong. And so, but it's a very important question that Aquinas is dealing with 480 some odd years earlier. Is revolution ever okay? And his answer is basically, usually it's not. Usually you should just suck it up, and God gives us good rulers sometimes, and that's great, but he gives us bad rulers to chastise us. And by the way, our founding fathers write this in the Declaration of Independence. They say, look, we don't really want revolution, but sometimes things get so bad that you actually kind of have to take the risk, even if you're risking some domestic tranquility. Okay. So how does Aquinas say? And Aquinas, probably the greatest theologian ever to live, the common doctor of the church, how does Aquinas say revolutions are to be conducted? He says they should follow subsidiarity. So it shouldn't be the rabble rising up like a mob, like the Bolsheviks or something, burning buildings. It should be the authorities, the people who are, if the king goes mad, it should be the people right below the king, and then the people below them, and the people below them. So you have a kind of orderly revolution. And I could see this working very well with cigars, because if the king went mad, if some Democrat tyrant said, I'm going to get rid of all of your cigars, I promise you, at least half of the Senate Republicans, and maybe more than half of the Republican governors, would immediately spark up their cigars. And so we would have actually leadership in subsidiarity to lead a revolution that I don't want to speak for St. Thomas Aquinas, but it at least has some resonance with his view of revolution.
And I agree with you. And you say that. So we had a similar situation to literally what you just explained. Maybe they took it from Aquinas himself, but our governor here had a no meat Monday for like when he first got elected. It was like 6 months after. It was in the summertime, right?
Yeah.
And everybody hashtagged that. I saw all the barbecue channel, all the Facebook groups, everybody tagged our governor, tagged the No Meat Wednesday. Literally, the grocery stores around me were sold out of meat people were like cooking. One guy posted, "I'm making 10 turkey or I'm making 10 chickens." He goes, "I only got a family of 5. I don't know what I'm gonna do with everything." Just to do it. But like that's a very legitimate form of civil disobedience. Like, you don't want us to do something? Well, we're gonna do it. We're gonna spend our money to do it.
Yes, yes, that's right. And the thing with cigars, like I'm not some anarchist. I'm not a radical libertarian even. I don't, I'm not opposed to laws about drugs or food regulation even. I mean, the FDA drives me crazy generally, but it exists for a purpose. Like I grant that that's fine. The civil authority is there for our own good. I believe all of that. But you got to examine these things. And it's very ironic that the people who want to destroy tobacco, and not even just cigarettes or more addictive forms of tobacco, but the guys who want to destroy premium cigars, which are really much more a hobby than a habit, those are the same people who say we need to legalize marijuana, we need to deschedule and reschedule harder drugs, we need to stop arresting people for drug crimes. It's kind of crazy. The one drug, the one luxury that is really conducive to conversation and virtue and flourishing. A little bit of nicotine makes you a little sharper. That's the one they want to get rid of, and the one that makes you like a big dumb loner, and eating too many Cheetos or something. That's the one they want to legalize. And I think that you guys got this backwards. So.
Well, we're actually finding out inside and this is becoming very well known within the last probably 10 or so years, or maybe a little bit longer, within the weightlifting world. Nicotine's actually not the problem in cigarettes.
Yeah, yeah,
It's everything else, all the other crap that they add to it. It's like, say, chocolate's bad, but the arsenic that we added to the chocolate after we
yeah.
made the chocolate's not the problem.
You're
Like, a
right,
little
right.
bit of nicotine physiologically is actually good for your body. It's not, and it's like something less than 5% of the nicotine's even absorbed through your mouth. So
Right.
the whole idea of, oh, nicotine is absolutely boulder dash to me. It's malarkey. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's not a valid argument, considering, again, you have the crop that grew this country for so many years that now we're trying to more or less, I feel like it's what we did with the monument. They're just trying to erase it, like, for whatever
Yes. Yeah, that's
reason.
right. That's right. I actually have it on pretty good authority because the first congressional campaign I ever worked on, it's my first real campaign. I was 19, and it was for a family friend of mine, Nan Hayworth, who's still a friend of mine. And she ran as a Tea Party candidate in New York. Swing district is a very expensive race. And Nan was a medical doctor, ophthalmologist, Princeton graduate. I think she did her medical at maybe Columbia. And her husband, Scott Hayworth, another medical doctor, he actually delivered me. He brought me into this world. And I remember on the campaign trail, this was years and years ago, long before Zyn or any of those products, Nan would chew nicotine gum. I said, "Nan, what are you doing?" She goes, "Oh, it's a little bit of energy, good for your brain." And uh, she said, "The nicotine's really not the bad thing." And I said, "Well, look, you're a medical doctor with some very serious credentials, not to mention a politician that I trust." I said, "All right, good enough for you, good enough for me." And what's funny is now 15 years later, we're all having that conversation, saying, "Oh,
Hmm.
actually, some of what they told us might not be totally right."
Yeah, the whole food pyramid literally flipped upside down. Like, legitimately flipped upside down. Like, they just went, "No, we were wrong all these years. All right, here's the
But it's
obesity problem."
this is I mean, this is how you really about trust the science. You know that some of these are fads being pushed by ideologues because it's not even that they just moved a couple things around on the pyramid. Like they literally just flipped the whole thing upside down because they got it perfectly wrong.
Yeah, no, it's just like, we're not going to redesign it. It's just quicker to do this. So I want to kind of take a few minutes here to ask you about a little bit about your younger years and your Yale years, because for those
Yeah,
of you that don't know, Michael was an actor, but he also, I think,
yeah,
acted in a few things that he wouldn't probably act in today
yeah.
if he was to kind of go back. So, you know, before you were in your Yale years, before you were publicly known, obviously, as a conservative,
Yeah, yeah.
what did you actually believe politically in private versus how you would act publicly? Like, Like, did you truly believe the liberalness in private as you did publicly, or was it to kind
No,
of garner friends? Does that make
well, I no,
sense?
it does, but I was always kind of open about being on the right. I never really hid it all that much. I didn't lie about my views, but I was much more libertarian. And something I noticed was libertarians get a little bit of a pass because they're, in principle, pretty liberal. They share a lot of premises about individual autonomy and the social contract or what have you. Because libertarianism comes from classical liberalism, just as progressive liberalism also does. Um, so I became much more conservative in the traditionalist sense during my time in college. In the vein of Edmund Burke or Aristotle, or Michael Oakeshott, or a lot of other thinkers who really weren't libertarian. Now, I was an actor, I was a translator, I directed operas. So I was one of these rare conservatives, and I remain one who enjoys the arts. I actually do kind of like arts and culture. I was never much of an athlete, so I had to do that. And what's kind of funny is, you mentioned I've played all these crazy roles. I mean, the one that the liberals get a kick out of
It's
is
the first
because I
one.
oppose. Yeah, I play. Well, it's funny. I mean, I played multiple roles that were either like gay or kind of gay. They weren't even like totally gay, but they were like half gay, which I always joke. I say playing a gay guy at Yale is like the straightest thing that ever happened at Yale. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty light in the loafers university. Anyway, I also joke about this. I say, in different student plays or films or things. Yeah, I played like gay guys. I played Satan once in a play. And so I joke. I say, you can play Satan. You can play a murderer. None of that matters. You play a football player. You can play a soldier. None of that matters. I've played both of those too. But you play one gay guy, and they make fun of you for the rest of your life for it. But the thing that I always liked, actually, kind of about doing all these different roles, is I think it gives you a defense against what the liberals say, which is the liberals say you're closed minded. You're a conservative only because you're closed minded. And I say, well, not really. I really like considering things from the other guy's point of view. So much so that I was an actor, where my
Hmm.
job was to try to put myself in another guy's position and, make it so real that I'm even kind of acting it out in my body. And so, when they try to accuse us of saying, I don't know, being a phobe or a hater or a ist, this ist or a that ist, in a way, I'd say, well, no, look, conservatives are not that to begin with. But, to be an actor is in many ways to be a politician. The negative version of that is that you're a liar, you're self-absorbed or something. But the positive version, if you're good at those two things, is you have to be very interested in people. You have to be very interested in what makes people tick, and you have to care about the truth of the given circumstances or of the political order. And so, like, anyway, to fast forward, you mentioned one of these roles. So I play like a half gay guy in a Yale student film. And then I gave this speech at CPAC where I said, this is at the height of the trans craze. And I said, this is really nuts. And it's just not true. Men can't be women. It's wrong for everybody. It's bad for the people who say they're trans. It's bad for the rest of us. And we just got to get rid of it. It's got to be eradicated from society.
Yep.
And all these people, they thought it was, one, they accused me of like genocide or whatever. So completely insane. They had to retract their headlines happily.
People use
But
words they don't even understand. I feel like I'm Diego Montoya most of the time. Like, I don't think you understand the words coming out of your mouth.
yeah, it's true. But then they saw that when I was an actor, I played liberals, I played like half gay guys, and they said, well, haha, we've got you. Isn't this hypocrisy? And I thought, well, first of all, like acting is where you pretend to be something you're not.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's hypocrisy. But I said, but really, this should buttress our point, which is, we've been telling you, we as conservatives, that we're not racist, we're not sexist, we're not phobic or whatever. And then you come out here and you say, well, Michael, you in particular, you've directed or acted in plays of all sorts of backgrounds. I say, right, that's my point. I'm not like judging people personally. I'm just telling you there is objective reality,
Hmm.
and the real upshot of all of it is that it's good to live in the truth. It's good to tell people the truth, and that's
Yes.
actually good for everybody. And at that time in particular, but even still, the liberals, it seemed, were arguing, that it's better to lie. It's better to lie to people and tell them the man is really a woman, or marriage is really other than it is, or something. And I just say, no, man, I think lies are bad always for everybody involved.
I agree.
So in that way, I really kind of appreciate my acting background. There's a reason a lot of people in politics were actors. Teaches you how to memorize, teaches you how to speak, teaches you how to think from other people's points of view. But the other thing I'm grateful for is that I quit acting, because that is not a great line of work. I'll tell you, that is not conducive to human flourishing.
Yeah, I heard your mailbag the other day when that kid asked about being an actor. You were like, "No, run, run!" And then
Yeah.
Ben came in and was like, "No, run! Seriously, he's not lying." So
That's another one. My producer Ben Davies, he's actually a pretty successful actor. He's been in a lot of pretty big Christian movies, and but we joke about it all the time. So first of all, you got to run from the industry. I was joking to Ben Shapiro just the other day. I say, I'm the only guy in history who's ever been cured of the acting bug. A lot of people, they have it their whole lives, and I mean, I've been offered acting roles since I started my show. I've been offered multiple acting roles, like pretty cool ones actually, and I say, no, I'm good actually. I don't, and it got me thinking about some advice that an old Dante professor gave me years ago. Very intelligent guy, one of the only Republicans on the Yale faculty, by the way. And we were talking, and I said, I might be an actor, professor. And he said, "Oh, yes, I wanted to be an actor as a boy." And I said, "Oh, really? What did your family say about that?" He said, "They told me there's the door." I said, "Okay, well, good enough." And then I asked him, I said, "Do you regret, having followed this life as an academic and an intellectual and a literary scholar?" I said, "Do you regret doing that and not being an actor?" He said something very profound. He said, "Megalozzo, I used to be an actor, and now I am the real thing." I said, "That's a good line." I mean, the things that attract us to acting really should attract us all the more so to the real world. It's
Yep.
great to live away for an hour and a half, but it's so much better to live in fullness for your whole life.
No, I agree, and I think we need to do a revitalization of McGee and Me with Michael Knowles doing the voice of McGee. I mean, let's do
It's a
it.
great
Let's
idea.
do it, dude.
I'm in.
I think you guys should do it over at Daily Wire's kids pro. What is it? Oh my gosh, the name
Ben
just left
Key.
me. Ben
Ben
Key,
Key.
yes, Ben Key.
Yeah, I've got to add
Uh,
that to our pitch
I,
ideas. So I
I
have to
think you
re-up
should
that.
revitalize McGee and Me with you doing the voice.
Yeah.
The only access I have to the world of movies or any, my uncle Kurt does all the music for VeggieTales.
Really?
Yeah, no, legitimately, it's one guy. He plays like 100 instruments. I'm exaggerating. Like I think it's like 35,
Yeah.
40 instruments. But
Oh, that's
he
awesome.
legitimately does all the music for it. And so that's, I got to grow up around that, so that was fun.
That is really cool. That's something I really encourage. Like, I
He
remember
actually
I
lives by
was
you.
really,
Yeah, he's down there in the Franklin area.
there's a lot of musicians here in
Oh
Nashville. I have a
yeah.
ukulele sitting on my desk right now. I remember this. I was sitting at a bar. It wasn't a cigar bar, but they let you smoke cigars in LA. I was talking to an excellent photographer, really good, this old kind of European photographer. And he was good, excellent drinker too, which is why he was at the bar. But he was showing me some of his photographs. I said, "Wow, this is great. Where do you publish these? What do you do?" And he goes, "I don't publish them anywhere. I'm an amateur." And he said amateur. Usually people say amateur, they're embarrassed. He said amateur with great pride. I said, "Why? You could be a professional." He said, "No, no, no, you don't understand. A professional does it for money, but an amateur, it's like the word amatore, like, amare, it's you just do it for love." I said, "Oh, yeah, in a way, the amateur has it better than the professional."
Hmm.
And that's how I feel about music. I play a lot of instruments at the level of a pretty good 14-year-old. That's about it. I don't play any instruments well, but I play a lot of them at the level of a good teenager. But I love it. I love music. And so I encourage, I have guitars and banjos and ukuleles, and I got piano in the house. I got musical instruments all around the house, because I want my kids to play it for the love of it, to cultivate those loves in him. Maybe my kid will do a play or something. I hope for the love of it to then order you toward like a real purpose. VeggieTales is a great example of that show, because it uses cartoons and music and arts, but it's for like this really profound purpose. It has a kind of religious end to it.
No, I agree with you. I played trumpet for 9 years. I did jazz trumpet was my favorite. I hated concert band and I absolutely despised marching band, but I had
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do it to do jazz. I loved it. Actually,
yeah, yeah.
the guy that has my trumpet now plays at my parents' church. He's like the music director
Right.
for the church. So it's
That's
it's
great.
still in good use for him. Somebody here brings up a good point, and I would like to get your opinion on this. But before I do, everybody, if you have not typed in the words Mayflower space cigars, really simple. Doesn't matter on capitals or anything like that. We're doing a giveaway for the Pocahontas signed and confirmed signature by Michael Knowles and a 3 pack of the Dream that I'm smoking tonight as well. So if you have not typed in Michael Knowles, do yourself or Michael Knowles Mayflower Cigars, do yourself a favor and do that now inside the chat box. So the old adage, and I think what's his face, Rodney Dangerfield made this very prevalent within back to school. Those that can't do teach. You know, those that do
Yeah.
do, and those that can't do teach. We have a thing here. I'm curious. I think all teachers and scholars should serve 2 years in a real job. Would you agree with that?
I would go further. I think that they should kind of perpetually do real jobs. Not just to earn their
Like
stripes or something, or because
sabbaticals?
I'm yeah, sabbatical, or even I don't know, at least a volunteer kind of thing at the same time. But I don't mean a lot of people say that they have to serve 2 years in a real job, in order to kind of fix their thinking or something like that, or in order to earn their stripes or something. But I, I would go a little further and say that working in a real job, something that's more tangibly tied to production or material, is kind of necessary even to your teaching, even to your scholarship. I think probably my favorite living poet, contemporary poet, Dana Gioia. He was like a business executive for his whole poetic career. He would be publishing these great poems, and then he would be doing his job every day. And he said it's helpful for a poet to have a job. Since he quit that job, I think he just clears brush for a lot of the day. He does yard work. I think of the great 20th century poets, T.S. Eliot and Wallace Stevens. They both had jobs. They were working a bank, working at least in a publishing house. And it's kind of funny to think T.S. Eliot, the great modernist poet, that he just like worked in a bank. I mean, that's so crazy. But he liked working in the bank. He wanted to have a real job because it kind of kept him grounded in the real world. It gave him something to be doing, even as his subconscious was working in the background. So I agree with the advice, but I agree with it in a way that's probably nicer to teachers than most mean it by, which is yeah, teaching is a great profession. I'm really pro teacher. I'm really pro scholar, but you gotta I don't know, you gotta touch the ground a little bit too.
I think teachers should be bonused off how many kids graduate their class.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
and
exactly.
because okay, I mean, like 50%, right? If 50% graduate, you get something, right? You get like a TV or something, and
Yeah.
like 75, 80% graduate, you get a bonus. But I don't supply to the whole they're just dumb and can't learn. Now, I do understand that some situations with in some areas, in some inner cities,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
some rural towns, whatever, there's always going to be that one case. But I do feel like there are teachers that phone in the year.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. The way you'd have to do it, though, if you give the teacher a bonus based on passing the class, it'd have to be based on a standardized test or something, because otherwise you're just gonna get more of that grade inflation. You're gonna have teachers assigning themselves new TVs.
That's true. It's going to be. Well, I think you would be the perfect. I think it wasn't it Ben Franklin that said once the population realizes it could vote themselves,
Yeah,
if I think kind of in that same theory, like, oh, we got to hit 80%, everyone's graduating,
you're right, you're right, you're right.
How would a college Michael Knowles describe, or I should say, how would a college Michael Knowles describe Michael Knowles to a 2026 Michael Knowles if your
So
paths
my
crossed?
self-conception at the age of 18 or something, 19.
Yeah, yeah. What would you like? Obviously, you never probably conceived you'd be to the level of what you've become. So what would if you could travel back to the future style, what would you
Yeah.
tell yourself?
But you're saying, what would my younger self tell my older self?
Yeah, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
Like what would you kind of go
Well,
back and talk about?
I think my younger self would be curious because I was pretty ambitious. I've always been pretty ambitious. Um, and maybe in a way, maybe I was too ambitious or wrongly ambitious when I was younger, because as I mentioned, I was never quite a liberal exactly, but I was a libertarian and I was an atheist. So I was a little too much in my own head, I think. And I was thinking about myself too much. Kind of funny to say that in this hypothetical question where I'm thinking about not only myself but two versions of myself. But I was, I guess, of the view that I would succeed by just tyranny of will. I would just force it through. I would do whatever. I'd be ruthless. I'd be hustling. Whatever, all that stuff. And now it's not that I've lost one iota of ambition. I have all the same ambition. And if you're, if you get a little success in one area or another, in some ways that makes you more ambitious because
Mhm.
all of a sudden the things you desire are a little closer in reach.
Sure.
But the shift, I guess, would be even if I'm exactly as ambitious as I always was, my view of it now is that these wonderful things that happen are really blessings. They're really blessings from God. I mentioned the whole story of Mayflower. I mean,
Mhm.
you couldn't do that through tyranny of will. That has to be a gift from God. And so my view of it now is not that I'm gonna get to wherever I want by hook or by crook. My view is that God has arranged all things in His providence, and He extends an extraordinary, unimaginable amount of grace to me, and I have the freedom to cooperate with that grace or to turn away from that grace. But if I am taking the next best step and cooperating with God's grace as best I can, and endeavoring to avoid sin and to pursue or to cooperate in a relationship of grace, the things are going to end up as God wishes them to be, whether through His active will or His passive will. And so there's a greater deal of peace and, curiously enough, a greater deal of confidence, I think, that comes from that.
Mhm.
Because my view of things now is that it's really not all up to me, and it's not all up to blind chance or fate, but it's up to God, who is more reliable than all of those things.
What would an atheist Michael Knowles give as the viewpoint for being an atheist to a 2026 Michael Knowles? And do you think a atheist Michael Knowles would be able to hold ground to where you are now? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it does. He would not, because he didn't. He did
Okay.
not hold ground. So I know for a fact he didn't,
Okay.
because
Okay.
I am both of those guys. But what the atheist version would say is, "Come on, man, you serious?" That'd be
Okay,
the first
so
thing he'd say.
so it was that simple. It wasn't like you were on a firm footing of atheism, which by the
Well,
way,
no,
I'm a believer that atheism is just as much a religion as Catholicism because both require faith that the other one is right
yeah,
versus wrong. It's literally the exact same thing, except I'm saying yours doesn't exist and you're saying it does. You
right,
have to
right.
have faith.
And the other, but the other part, I mean, when you say I wasn't on sound footing, I agree, and I don't think there is sound footing for atheism, though it can feel persuasive to people, especially because it flatters some of our sensibilities. And it was especially persuasive to me when I was a punk kid, because it was the height of the new atheist phase. Christopher Hitchens and Daniel
Mhm.
Dennett and Richard Dawkins and them, and
Bart
those
Ehrman.
guys, yeah, right, those guys appealed to intellectual hubris, and I fancied myself a smart kid when I was 13. So I'm only a little bit joking when I say that I would tell my religious self, "Come on, man, are you serious? I thought you were smart." Oh, we all know that God doesn't really exist. And so my atheism was weak in as much as I could recite to you some cute lines from Christopher Hitchens or Voltaire or whatever, but I had not taken seriously the people who made the best arguments for God's existence. Aquinas, in particular, has the five ways. But well, the proof of this is that the moment that I encountered even what Aquinas considered to be a weak argument for God's existence, the ontological argument, when I was 18, it really crumbled a lot of my atheism. Now, I persisted without religion. I didn't go right back to church. I didn't believe in Jesus. That took a little while longer, but it started to crumble the intellectual edifice of my atheism, because it was really that edifice had been built on. skepticism, cultural vibes, and some clever one-liners from a decent writer, Christopher Hitchens. And so when you introduce Saint Anselm of Canterbury, when you introduce even the guys who followed him, like Leibniz or Gödel or Bertrand Russell, for that matter, who was an atheist and a logician, but who said the ontological argument is sound, or guys like Alvin Plantinga, whatever. That's just on one type of the argument. When you introduce those guys, if all you've got is 13-year-old Christopher Hitchens quotes, that is going to crumble. And so I'm glad it did. It's curious and it's worth considering for people who might still be atheist or agnostic or whatever. It's kind of funny that I believed God existed years before I acted as though God existed. In other
So you were
words, my
agnostic.
no, it was worse than that.
Okay.
I was a theist. I had come
Okay.
to the
Okay.
belief. I mean, I had assented with my intellect that God existed. Like I couldn't argue against it, and yet I still wanted to, get up to no good. so, so there was this total chasm between my intellect and my will, and I don't mean to make total light of it because when we cultivate certain habits, I don't know, staying out too late, chasing too many girls, whatever it be, when you cultivate habits, they're very, very hard to break. A simple logical statement from your mind is going to struggle to break those, which is why it's probably better to go back to the wisdom of Aristotle, who points out that virtues are habits and
Mhm,
vices are habits too.
mhm.
So an addiction is just a bad habit that is deeply ingrained, and virtues are good habits that are deeply ingrained. Took a little while longer for me to finally come around and stop being so stubborn about God's grace.
Yeah, I always, I I believe in something. It's hard for me to
Yeah,
wrap my mind around one thing, right? And again,
yeah, yeah.
that's the failure of the human brain, right? You ask a human to describe infinity, they go, huh? No
Yeah.
human can properly describe something that they can't possibly comprehend. That's where the whole faith thing comes in.
Yeah,
And
it's so funny you say that. That's amazing providence. I was driving home today. I've been working a lot, and I was listening to a lecture, and I tried to imagine uh, God, just like what it's like to be in front of God. And it was this very jarring experience because, as you say, we can't grasp infinity, we can't grasp eternity, we certainly can't comprehend God in His fullness in our minds. So, we get little hints. I mean, we can use our reason. I'm fully convinced we can use our reason to know that God exists from the natural world to deduce, as you just put it,
Mhm.
there's something. We can at least get to God in the most general sense does exist. Personally. But then, you have to grapple with revelation. Then
Mhm.
you have to grapple with the historicity of the person of Christ, whether or not you believe that. Then you have to grapple with the authority of the apostles and of the church, the authenticity of the miracles, the reality of sacrament. There are all of these attendant things that come on that do require faith. And it's not faith that's opposed to reason, as many people think, but it's faith working with reason as a kind of a Thomist, a follower of St. Thomas Aquinas, once described this to me. I said, how does it work? Will and grace, not the gay sitcom, but your free will and grace and everything. How do these things work? Faith and reason, how do they work? What's leading the other one? And he said, it's kind of like a waltz. When you're dancing a waltz, it's not totally clear who's leading whom. You're kind of just moving together, even though there are two constituent parts. And to me, that's faith and reason, and will and grace.
How do you justify when people say, because a lot of my political background is I was never an objectivist, although conceptually
I
loved.
was.
Yeah, I wasn't an objectivist because I just first off, I read too much into Ayn Rand and realized that she died by her own beliefs, very lonely, and and so I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't want that. Nathaniel
Yeah.
Bradford kind of turned away, but like it was always kind of like that understanding of faith and religion. It was never big picture or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
it necessarily applied to me. So when you kind of talk with these younger generation and they're asking you questions about, oh, I drink, oh, I smoke pot,
Yeah.
I cuss, the F word's my favorite word,
Yeah.
or
Use it like a
this,
comma.
or whatever. How do you get them to what do you say to them to go, that doesn't matter? Because I think so much of the way people look at the Bible is, instead of a guidance to life and happiness,
Yeah.
is a list of rules and things. It's like how the Constitution was written. It's a list of negative
Yeah.
rights.
Right.
It's got
Right.
nothing positive in it. So how do you
Yeah.
overcome that in a conversation?
Well, a lot of people think that sin is just like breaking a rule, and it's not really. It's more like when things go south in your marriage. It's than it is like getting pulled over by a cop. It's not so much breaking a rule as it is violating a relationship of grace. And the rules are the rules matter. The rules are there, kind of like guardrails, but that's not the whole story. That's not even most of the story. So the first thing, I don't really need to persuade young people of all that much. Young people are returning to faith, and they're returning to the church, and they're specifically returning to more traditional and orthodox forms of Christianity,
A lot after
and to some
Charlie. A
degree
lot
Judaism.
after Charlie.
A lot after Charlie had a lot to do with it. It was happening before, but Charlie really
I
accelerated it.
didn't mean to interrupt. Please
And
continue.
no, no, and so in many ways, it's younger people leading those conversations for me. But the thing
Hmm.
I find is what they're after is the truth. I think it was C.S. Lewis. Many writers have written on this, including St. Paul. If Christianity is true, it's the greatest thing in the world. If Christianity is false, it's worth nothing. The only thing that Christianity cannot be is moderately valuable. It
Yeah,
cannot be that.
you're right.
It's really all or nothing. And St. Paul said this. He said, if the resurrection is false, we are the most to be pitied. We are like it is really bad. And so, what young people are after, I think, is the truth, because they've been raised in a liberal culture that says that there is no truth. They basically ask Pontius Pilate's question, "What is truth?" A
Hmm.
cynical question. They're told that everything's relative, and we don't even know what a woman is, and so they get that from the liberal culture, and it's insane, and they know that's insane. So then they turn to the right wing, or even the churches. And what are they getting from the churches? They're getting this kind of wishy-washy, squishy stuff that is alternately called moral therapeutic deism, or a kind of a church service that becomes less about worshiping God and more about just like entertaining people and making people feel good or whatever. Or it's called expressive individualism or something, woo-woo spirituality rather than religion. And so I think for young people, they're getting starved on both sides, and they say, "Look, just tell me the truth. Just what is it? Like, I know that a woman is different from a man. Okay, I know that like a country is different from another country, and like borders are real. I know that good is different from bad. So give it to me straight, doc." And I think that's why they're very attracted to these more orthodox forms, because if we can come to an answer to the question, does God exist? And I think we can. I think everyone can. And if the answer is yes, then you have another question, which is, okay, well, uh, are the Jews right? Or are the like Zoroastrians right? Or like, is there some legitimacy to at the very least, the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament? You say, well, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it rings true to me. But I spoke to the comedian Norm Macdonald before he died, and he said, "The thing about me, I'm uneducated, but I always knew the Bible was true." So that's a very amazing insight. But for people who don't know, you say, okay, well, you can test the claims, and you do this in the New Testament, because there's this guy who is attested to in historical records, including the New Testament, but beyond the New Testament, who says he's God and who is killed, and who a lot of people say rose from the dead and like walked among them and did a bunch of weird stuff like eat fish. So did that really happen? Is there evidence that that really happened? I think there is. I think the fact that 11 apostles went willingly to their deaths, John, well, I guess if you count Judas, 11 did go to their deaths,
Hmm.
to the ends of the earth to spread this message, is proof that they were serious about it. They weren't trying to fool people, and they all kind of agreed on it. So unless it was some mass psychosis, it wasn't a delusion. Um, and the fact that the church has endured as the only institution from antiquity in the West, that's pretty shocking. That would be maybe a claim to its authenticity. Uh, the fact that it's spread throughout the whole Roman Empire and then throughout the entire world is unbelievable. This kind of strange religious movement that began in a far-flung corner of the Roman Empire from this ornery people that most of the other people didn't even like, the Jews. That's like pretty crazy. And so anyway, I'm belaboring the point a little bit, but you go down and down all of these questions. Okay, well, if Jesus is who he says he is, and he says, on this rock I'll build my church. Is there a real church? Is there a visible church? What is it? Is it the Methodists? Is it the Presbyterians? Is it the Catholic? Who is it? And you kind of go through these questions, and you arrive at very particular answers. And this is what's scandalous to a lot of people, because a lot of people, they're okay with God existing in the abstract, but they don't want to have to admit that you have to go to that church down the street. That's too weird for them. It's sometimes called the scandal of particularity. I mean, this is the scandal of Christ himself and of the cross, which is an obstacle to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. This is written about even by St. Paul. It's weird. We don't expect God to come down as a particular man. We certainly don't expect God to become incarnate as a little baby. You kind of expect him to come in like Thor or something, and port the oceans and smash a giant or whatever. And so it confounds our expectations. But then, of course, isn't that exactly how it would happen? Isn't that exactly how God would save the world? That he would confound our limited human expectations. So anyway, that's all a kind of long evangelical sermon or preaching.
No, it's great. It's great. And in fact, here's a question. But after this question, it's the last tough one, or not tough one, but serious one. And then we're going to get into a lightning round. We'll close the show. I've been wanting to ask you this question. So I did, in my own personal journey throughout Christ and belief, I really dove into Bart Ehrman. Are you familiar with him?
No, not really, no.
So Bart Ehrman was a Moody Bible Institute researcher turned atheist. And he talks about in one of his long lectures of how the very first, and I might be getting the dates wrong, so please forgive me, but that the very first understanding of the word of the name of Jesus Christ was mentioned in 63 AD, was found in a manuscript from 63 AD. And he talks about the Bible is more or less a giant game of telephone. It's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. How would you combat because essentially what he's saying is if God gave man his own word, why wouldn't he protect it better instead allowing, and we're not going to get into specific books or narrations of the Bible, but pervert it? How would you kind of combat how could you believe a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy?
Well, a great question. The first thing you would have to point to, and I remember I used to bring this up myself in my atheist days, the thing you have to point to is the shocking uniformity of biblical translations that exist today, even between the Septuagint, which is where the Bible is traditionally translated from, and the Masoretic text, which was preferred by medieval Jews. And then some Protestant reformers preferred the Masoretic text because they thought it was older than the Septuagint. But then, ironically, we discovered the Septuagint is actually older than the Masoretic text. And, the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed a lot of this. But I guess I would say, one, the shocking uniformity between all these different versions of the Bible is evidence that we're not looking at a perversion of a perversion of a perversion, but we're actually seeing, a shocking agreement. And then you can zoom in on the Gospels, and you say the Gospels seem, at first glance, to disagree on certain details, or one will leave out a guy who was supposed to be at a party, at Martha and Mary's house, say, and you would say, well, this is evidence that it's not inerrant, right? But I would actually say the opposite. I would say, no, this is evidence that this is talking about something that really happened, because the gospel accounts relate events in much the same way newspaper accounts relate events, in that they'll focus on the newspaper. New York Times and the Washington Post, well, maybe they're bad examples. I don't want to consider them the gospel truth, but I don't know, let's call it, Daily Wire and Fox News and the Blaze or something. They might focus on different aspects of an event. They might focus on different details. One might leave out a detail, and one adds one in, and one like the Gospel of John version, as opposed to the Synoptics, is focusing on some totally different version of it. But they are all in harmony, nevertheless. And at the very least, we would say they're all describing a real event. That would be the other thing. But then I would go even to the premise, which is, okay, if the earliest document that we can find 2,000 years later mentioning Christ comes from 63 AD, we're talking about still well within living memory of the crucifixion and the
Hmm.
resurrection. Now, the fact that we have ancient sources even beyond the Christian communities and the Jewish communities, like Josephus and others, who are referencing this event, referencing Pontius Pilate, referencing Jesus, is impressive in itself. But then, furthermore, the fact that you have the earliest catechism of the church, the Didache, comes from 70 AD, so only 7 years after what you're referring to, which presents a catechetical teaching that
Hmm.
is basically identical to the one that we have today. That's pretty shocking. And then you look at the fathers of the church and even the early philosophers, so some Jewish, some Hellenic. I think of Justin Martyr. Justin Martyr is writing in what, 150 AD, and presenting these amazingly congruent and piercing philosophical explanations of Christianity that are coming from geographically dispersed areas. I mean, some coming from places in what we would now call Armenia. You have churches all the way, obviously, in Rome, where Peter and
Hmm.
Paul go, churches in Alexandria and Athens, all over the place. The fact that they all share the same belief in the same story, that they all even view themselves as a united community, I think tells you that this is based on something real that really happened. And yeah, I would put the observation back on its head and say, hold on, you're telling me that we even today have firm documentary proof from only 30 years after the resurrection? Like, that's crazy. That would be like me saying today, writing a story about like Newt Gingrich's election, right? That would be like me today writing a story about the 1998 Yankees World Series team, the greatest baseball team ever in the history of baseball. And I could tell you, like, maybe not game by game, but I could give you a lot of details. Paul O'Neill climbing up the wall, stealing a home run. I can give you a lot of details right now off the top of my head. And then some guy 2,000 years later saying, well, I don't think that the New York Yankees ever really existed, because the only proof we have of that is an account written by Michael 30 years later. You say, no, that's evidence that they definitely, I mean, like, look at all the details.
No, and you know what I'm finding a lot of fun with is I had the same discussion with my brother, and I asked you this question specifically to see if kind of they would match, and you guys both
Similar, yeah.
described the because I questioned my brother. There's I think it's a John when Christ is on the cross. That's not in. It's like three verses or four verses that are not mentioned in any other book,
In
but
the
it's
synopsis.
from John's account. And my brother gave literally the exact same thing. They're all written from each individual POV. It's
Yeah.
not
And John
it's
was there. John was actually there,
exactly.
right?
So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I appreciate you kind of answering that because that's one I've like. I was thinking earlier today, like I'm going to ask this one because I want to see if it kind of lined up, but it does. So I want to ask you some lightning round questions here, and we'll close the show. This has been an amazing bucket list item, brother, and I am so excited. I want your shirt size because I'm going to bring you a shirt for
All right.
TGS.
It's great.
So I ask these questions to everybody that comes on the show. What is your favorite rapper? Now you can give me musician or you can give me cigar rapper. Up to you, or both. It's completely up to you. But what's your favorite?
Well, okay, we'll put the Sugar Hill Gang to the side, and no one's ever beat the Sugar Hill Gang, in the music side. And then if we're gonna put my own Mayflower rapper to the side, my favorite one has got to be.
Now I'm not talking brand. I'm talking either Habano,
Oh, okay. I'm
Maduro.
sorry.
No,
You
no,
know
yeah,
what? I
yeah, yeah,
went to
yeah.
I went to band. Oh no, my favorite. Well, actually, my favorite rapper is kind of hard too. I guess I would have to say Habano. As just a
Okay,
kind of all rounder,
it
like
is.
desert island sort of thing. It's not at any moment of the day. That's not my favorite. But if I'm just like kind of reaching in blind, no bands, I don't know what I'm smoking. I'm probably going to feel safe with a Habano rapper.
It's a go-to.
Yeah,
What is your favorite pairing
with any kind of cigar.
with any kind of cigar?
My The pairing that I think is the best is cognac or maybe port,
Okay.
but especially with port, you can't have too much of it, like, it's just too sweet. So, my actual go-to is scotch or maybe I live in Tennessee now, so I have to drink bourbon, of course. But the one that I think is better, the thing that I actually think can pull out more of the cigar is either, a wine or a fortified wine, or what I would reach for would be cognac, because it's sort of like the whiskey of wine. You kind
Sure,
of get the
sure,
best of
yeah.
both worlds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now give us a specific brand and a specific cigar from Mayflower that you would pair that cognac with.
Okay, I would do a specific brand of cognac.
Yeah. Let everybody know
Yeah,
what
I
a
would.
Michael Knowles pick is.
Yeah, okay. I would say I would specifically pair the Dusk, because I think it has sufficient body and strength that, you're not gonna be overpowered by the cognac. Remy Martin, you can't go
Okay.
wrong with.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm a little cheaper, I'll do like E&J brandy or something. Armagnacs are great, and you can get like weird tiny little Armagnacs. But I wouldn't pair the cognac with the Dawn. The Dawn I'd really really pair coffee or tea, and then if I'm gonna pair any kind of booze, it would be a little lighter, like a Chianti or something.
Okay.
And then for the Dream, I think the Dream is where you start to really get into port,
I could
or
see that.
like a sweeter Scotch, like a
hmm
like a Macallan or something like that,
Yep. I
or
would
bourbon.
I
Obviously,
would
bourbon
agree.
is great for that.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that. What's a hobby since for anybody that doesn't know, Michael Knowles is rich. All right. So we're just gonna this next
Yeah,
question is of
I've become rich. Yeah.
this is because he's worked his ass off to do so. What is one thing, what is a hobby your fame has allowed you to partake in that as a kid you never thought you'd be able to, like watches, wine collecting, bourbon collecting, car collecting, something like that?
I tell you what, it's funny because I didn't have money as a kid, as I mentioned, and I was thinking about what my career would be at one point. I was thinking about all these ways in which I didn't need money, and my mother said to me, even not that we had a lot of means, but she said, "Michael, you were not made for poverty." And I said, "Okay, maybe I'll go." And then what's funny is the career lines that I went into, show business, politics, media, they're really actually not known for making a lot of money. My other friends went into like finance and stuff. But anyway, it ended up working out pretty well for
I
me.
think so.
I
I think so.
yeah, it's been, I don't own any islands, but I feel great about it. But I'm still cheap. I guess the issue is I'm still very frugal, as I mentioned. So, I bought a fancy watch, and I really like watches, but and I did buy one fancy one, but I'm too
What is
cheap
it?
to like collect watches. It's a Datejust, Rolex
Oh,
Datejust.
fantastic.
Um,
Okay,
I
awesome.
love it.
Awesome. With the is
I
that the
had a fake
Jubilee
one of that.
bracelet?
On the Jubilee, yeah, and
Yeah.
I had a fake one in high school that I bought. I forget if it was in Midtown or Chinatown, and I had this like $15 knockoff until it finally broke. And I said, okay, my first book with words, and my first baby, my first son, were due on the same day, and I had to get over my cheapness. And I said, if I don't buy the fancy watch now, I will never buy it. Like, this is the occasion, right? So I bought it, but I can't get into buying a bunch of them. And then I don't care about cars. I drive a very inexpensive car. I love my house. I would die in my house. I don't want to buy some McMansion or anything. I don't. So I don't do sports well enough to like go skiing in the Alps. But the one hobby that I really like, I mentioned, I like playing music.
hmm
And look, if I could get over my cheapness, I would buy really nice guitars, vintage Martin, pre-war, maybe some crazy Gibson or something. But I told you, I'm too cheap. So what I did instead, I just did this, very uncharacteristic. I found a great deal on eBay for a ukulele. This is a 100-year-old ukulele.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it's a 100-year-old Martin. It's from the 1920s. It's made with woods that are like sort of illegal now, and it's mostly in tune. And anyway, the nice thing about ukes is they're a lot cheaper than vintage guitars. And
Yeah,
so anyway, there was one where
yeah.
I think, I sprung like $800 for that uke, which for me, it almost makes my skin crawl to do it. But that was one where I think if I were a struggling actor or something, I would not have mustered it. But I was very happy to indulge.
See, I love that you're still just normal. It's not like you got a fame and money and went crazy. What is if you? I got two more questions for you. If you had to choose without saying Jesus, because I think that's a cop out answer. Who is one historical figure, and what Mayflower cigar would you bring if you could smoke with them?
Mm. Well, that I of any historical figure I could name
Any historical figure other than
yeah,
Jesus.
other than Jesus and
I don't know that he would smoke a cigar to begin with, to be honest with
yeah, I don't. Well, that's a profound theological debate that has great implications for our favorite hobby. So I'll have to stew on that. Um, maybe the two names that come to mind are Dante, my favorite poet. I have a
you. Okay.
statue of him right there,
Yep.
and Thomas Aquinas, my favorite theologian, or maybe Saint Jerome. I actually have holy relics of both of them up there. I have a friend gave me a number of holy relics, uh, but I would say, look, Aquinas would be amazing, right? But the problem is he was so unbelievably logical and brilliant and erudite and all this. I think he would be tough. He'd be a tough hang. I don't think he'd be the loosest hang, you know? I don't. But whereas Dante, I think Dante could be a
Oh,
hang,
he
you
would
know?
be
I think
fun. He'd be trippy.
he would be fun. Yes, and I would bring the dusk, though it's a little anachronistic, but part of me, I'd get a kick because Dante was from Tuscany. I would maybe have to make a special blend of Mayflower. With actually, I could use tobacco from Kentucky and Tennessee and make a fire cured Toscano style cigar,
Ooh, there you
which
go.
it would be what like 500 years later that became
Mm-hmm.
the American tobacco, but Italian cigar
Mm-hmm.
in Tuscany. So to me that would be too. I don't even really like them that much, but it'd be too fitting. I think I'd have to bring it to Dante.
No, absolutely, and I love that answer, and I agree with you. Thomas Aquinas probably would be a little dry.
Yeah.
Be a little be a little dry. So before I ask the last question of the night here, we're gonna do our drawing giveaway for the Pocahontas and Three Dreams cigars that we are doing tonight. So we've got everybody registered in here that's watching, that's currently on. Let's go ahead and select the winner. Let's see. Oh, Jam, JJ Jam. Fantastic. Awesome. So JJ, reach out to me. I think I've got your information. I'm pretty sure you've won here before, and I've got it. But please reach out to me. You'll be getting a Pocahontas. Again, verified signature. All
Yeah.
right.
That's
Verified.
it.
Hang
That's the
on to
one.
this. This is
Yeah.
going to be worth Bitcoin money. All right. So hang on to that. You got three of the Dream cigars coming your way. Reach out to me when you get the opportunity, and we'll send it over to you. Last question of the night, Michael. I stole this question from inside the Actor Studio, James Lipton, and I think you're one of the perfect guests to ask this to. When you get to meet your creator at the pearly gates, what do you want to hear?
Come on in. That's what I'd like to hear. I don't need to hear any some people say, I want to hear "Well done, thy my good and faithful servant." I'd love to hear that too. Some people would say I'd love to hear, you kept the faith and finished the race. Sure, I'd love to hear that. I don't need to hear anything about me. I don't need to hear anything about what I did. I probably don't want to hear much about what I did because a lot of what I did is not so great. Uh, I want to be told, hey, thanks to me, thanks to the big guy, and maybe a tiny little bit that you happen to cooperate with me, you get in. You're in the club, kid. That's all I need to hear. That's all I want to hear.
Fantastic. Michael, this has been such an amazing honor to have you on the show again. I found that email from 2021, and I'm like, I'm gonna share a little bit because like it was just such like a Hail Mary style email, and then to meet your fantastic Tara, who's
Yeah,
absolutely
there is fabulous.
fantastic at Cigar Fest, helped me set this up. Thank you so much. You always have a home here at the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show. Stick around here to the end. But until we see you all again, smoke as much as you can, smoke as many Mayflower cigars as possible, and have a great, great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.